Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Intelligent Marathon webinar. I'm George Anderson, and yeah, just good to crack on with this because I know that we've been running this program for a couple of years now, and many of you have done it and had great success with it. But it's also many of you are training for the marathons in the autumn this year, especially Dublin, and a few New York marathon runners as well. And that's 16 weeks from tomorrow. So given that the training program is 16 weeks long, it seemed to make sense to do something to sort of mark the occasion and mark the countdown, the start of the countdown. I know that many of you will be getting excited about doing that. That's not to say that this is only going to be of benefit if you do have a marathon at that time, if you're watching the recording of this, or you are targeting a marathon and it's either sooner or further away than that, then you're still going to benefit by some of the stuff I'm going to go through. And I will just say as well that there's today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover, give you an overview of what I believe are the key points of the program and the reason why I designed it the way I designed it. And hopefully, I'm assuming you have confidence, otherwise you wouldn't have gone ahead and purchased it in the first place. And it's an investment that you make in yourself because you're going to put a lot of time and effort into training, so you need to be confident that you're doing the right thing. And so I want to give you the reason behind some of the key points of the marathon training program. And so yeah, really, it's going to be nothing different to what's in the program section itself. If you were to log into the website, intelligent-running.com, and access the iMarathon from within there, then you're going to get all the same stuff as I'm going to say now, but I'm going to go through it in a sort of a 20-30 minute snapshot that just really punctuates, as I said, what I believe are the key points. So just to make sure I know that there's a few of you watching this evening, and so I know who's there, can you just look up and wave at the camera for me, please, if you're there? And how many of you actually did that? All right, tell me now, who actually just did wave at the camera, even though your camera's not actually on and I can't see you, but you can see me. So I can see how many people are tuning in tonight, and I know that there'll be a few questions on the Facebook page as well. If you're accessing this through Google+, my Google+ page, then fine, no problem whatsoever. It won't mean very much to you unless you have access to the program, and if you haven't got your copy yet, you have a marathon coming up, then intelligentmarathon.com is the place to go. But if you're watching this through the Facebook, the Facebook coaching group, then what you need to do is the link that you clicked on to access this, if you have questions, that's where you ask your questions. So just type them in as comments to that post, no other post, or don't create new posts for this. Type them into that post and I'll answer them once I've finished rabbiting on, because that's really what I'm going to do. There's no script to this. As such, I'm going to flick over my page in a second, and so I can see the program and I can see the key points, the key resource downloads. I'm just going to pile through it and go through it in the kind of detail that I see fit when I get to it. So let's see what we got. I'm going to come over here. So right now, and it would also help actually if you have a copy of the program in front of you. That is going to help, because it just means that you can see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. So right now on my screen, I'm looking at the marathon program, the 16-week schedule. And broadly speaking, it's broken into 3 parts. And then it just obviously rolls straight through 16 weeks start to finish. So there are 3 main phases to it. And the first phase, the idea of that is to give your body a bit of an opportunity to recover. 16 weeks is a heck of a long time to be absolutely nailing the training, and even though we only train 3 days a week, it's a tough program because we really do focus on the quality instead of just piling in the miles and getting the quantity going on. So the reason for having it into 3 sections is a couple of reasons, but mainly we want to take those breaks. You can see week 5 and week 10 are sort of recovery weeks where we just back off the volume. The intensity may well still be there, but we're certainly backing off the volume and allow the adaptations to take place. And that really it underlines the main reason why I opted for a 3-run-a-week schedule when I was designing the iMarathon, and it was the same reason for the iHalf and the same reason for the I-10 project, my other training program, is because I wanted to make sure that you went for the quality and then you had that time afterwards to recover and to make sure that you were adapting to the training that you put in, the stimuli that you've given your body. Because one of the classic mistakes of marathon running is you just do too much, build up the volume, build up the intensity, running 7-8 days a week, and then by week 9, 10, 11 of a 16-week program, you're burnt out and getting injured and peaking as well. And even if you don't get injured, you may be finding yourself peaking of fitness 3-4 weeks early, and by the time the taper's over, you're actually still too tired to put out your best performance. So we put in these recovery weeks there to make sure that doesn't happen, or at least help prevent overtraining and burning out. So let's take a look at this first phase then. You'll see a dominance of hills and threshold running. The long runs kind of build up a little bit. I'm not too concerned with the long runs in this first phase. You can see they get up to an hour and a half in week 4 there, but most people not most, but many people who come to the iMarathon have already got a bit of a basic. You can already run for an hour reasonably comfortably, and as such, running for an hour is not really going to be that much of a trauma, especially as we're looking at doing the long runs at a slower than marathon race pace. And I'll come back to that point when I talk about the second phase. But let's take a look at the Tuesday and the Friday workout. Of course, you can manipulate these, put the days in wherever you want. It's always been a bit of a standing joke that it's the only marathon program where the first day of the program is a rest day. That was actually a mistake. The Tuesday session should be the Monday, just for that first week. But the idea of having the Monday as a rest is that you've just done the previous week on a Sunday, you've done a long run, so you want to give yourself a rest day the day after. But hey, that's how it is. So it seems to not be too much of a problem. So the threshold runs and the hill runs are all the same timings, and the 3x8, 3x10, 3x8, 3x10 for weeks 1 to 4. They do change, they progress each week because we're looking at reducing the amount of recovery that you get. And obviously it's one of the variables you can change. If you reduce the amount of recovery that you're getting between blocks of threshold running, then that's going to make it a lot harder, because you're not giving yourself the chance to recover. But the assumption is that your body has adapted to those first couple of weeks of training, and so it's able to cope with those demands a lot better. And at the end, you're doing 30 minutes of threshold running. Well, by the end of this, you're going to be up to an hour of threshold running. So 3x10 minutes with a bit of a break, that's going to seem like a walk in the park when it comes to the end. And just a note on threshold running, folks, go and check out the video on that. It explains it in glorious detail. If you ever have any questions or you're unclear exactly what you need to do for the threshold sessions, then please do post them on the Facebook coaching group, because that should be abundantly clear. If it's not, don't worry, don't feel stupid for not understanding it, but do post the question so I can make sure I build that into it so everybody knows exactly what they need to be doing for the threshold runs. And actually the hill sessions as well, because they're continuous hills, these Kenyan hill sessions, if they're continuous, they're threshold intensity as well. So it should feel about the same, apart from you're on an incline up and down for the hill sessions on the Friday. So they build up and they build down. 3x8, 3x10, 3x8, 3x10, the same things apply. You reduce the amount of recovery that you give yourself. Now, week 5, you'll see that it drops down, and you're doing 5x3 minutes, which is our first taste of something a little bit faster, and it's just about intensity at this stage. It should feel easier than doing 3x10 minutes. You're just going a wee bit quicker, so you feel like you're pushing yourself harder, but you're only doing it for 3 minutes. Yeah, you're doing 5 blocks, but you get a good bit of recovery in there as well. This is because we don't want to get the volume in there. That's 15 minutes of threshold intensity work versus 30 minutes of intensity work the previous week. So you've gone up and up and up, and then you drop down. That's how this step change recovery works. And then you go back up again for week 6, as you'll see in a moment. The 45-minute easy run, what I would like you to do in that, which isn't in the program, but it's something I've talked about since writing this, is the technique run. Where if you look at the technique video I put out last week, or early this week, sorry, it gives you a few technique coaching points that you can really focus on, and those technique runs are a great opportunity to just have that as your objective. It doesn't matter about pace, doesn't matter about distance, doesn't even really matter if you don't do 45 minutes or you do a bit more or a bit less, doesn't matter. You're just trying to work the form and get good at running, get better at running. So. Okay, let's move on to week, because you can see there that the Sunday run drops right down from 90 minutes in week 4 to 45 minutes in week 5 as well, and then we're back up again in week 6 as we start the second phase. And this is where we start to get a little bit kind of consolidating with what we've just developed in the first 4 or 5 weeks, where the threshold runs start to really kind of bite in. And we've got 4 by 8 minutes, right the way up to 2 by 20, and then beyond that in the next phase of the program, at 2 by 15, 2 by 20 minute threshold. They're going to be tough runs. So you do need to build up to those and be prepared to listen to your body, as you should always be doing, but be prepared to modify that pace as you're going to keep the intensity the same. So you're looking at that 8.5 out of 10. It builds up beyond that, then you just got to slow down before you absolutely have to slow down. If that makes sense. So it should do if you've watched the video. So the Friday run, a couple more hill runs. Then we're going to go to these build-up runs, a 20-minute easy, 20-minute race pace, and 20-minute threshold runs. And those sessions are really designed to give you a feel for what it's like to step it up. So you should know what your target race pace is at this stage. In the program, obviously, there's the module on goal setting. And it is important to have at least some idea of what your target time is. Even if you're just telling yourself, I just want to get around the damn thing, then let's say you're targeting 5 hours, then you still have an idea as to what your finish time is, because you can work backwards from there. And 5 hours, I know it's going to be about 12 minutes a mile, something along those lines. You have an idea there as to what your pace is. And so you know that when you go easy, then you step up to race pace, it might not be that much of a step up. And then you step it up to threshold pace or intensity from there, and you can see these increases. You don't have to have a fancy watch, Garmin or Timex or anything like that, or a thing on your iPhone. You just go by feel. The race pace is useful to have a really good indication, but it's not essential. It's not essential because you just build in that feel for what it's like, and if you're struggling with that, then yeah, by all means do some measured runs where you know that when you get to this point, then you're going to step it up to race pace, and by the time you get here, here's half a mile, here's 1 mile, here's a mile and a half, and each of those should be like 6 minutes for 5-hour marathon, and so you know what time you should be doing each of these blocks of the run in, and that way you don't need to have a Garmin. You just adjust your pace, but it's a good way of getting some practice in. Again, we're going to come back to that point in a second when we discuss the long runs shortly. Let's talk about the long runs now, because it seems like an appropriate point. So the first phase, we kind of just build it up to an hour and a half. It's not really that taxing, really. But when you get into the next part, the long runs really start to take a hold. And this is where your life starts to kind of come almost... You have to be quite clever with the way you design your life around the long runs when you get to an hour, 105 minutes plus. So 105 minutes, that's like an hour and 45. 120, that's 2 hours. You're going out for 2 hours on the trot, and 7 weeks down the line, you're looking at sort of September time. So nights are maybe getting a little darker, or days are getting shorter. So you might be a bit more restricted with the daylight hours. So you do need to be a bit quite clever with that and book them in to make sure that they happen. Because although the long run isn't a marathon program, it is a big part of it. So we do want to condition your body to be able to withstand just being able to go out there and be on your feet for those longer periods of time. So again, just to clarify here, this is about time on your feet rather than distance. And I've done that deliberately because I know that this program will work if you're going for sub 3 hours, and it'll work if you're going for sub 5 hours. If you're going for anything significantly quicker than 3 hours, then you probably want to have something a bit more bespoke, and you probably will want to add in a bit more training as well. Although I did do my sub 3 hours, which is when I was creating this program off just 2 runs, that was a little bit different. When I've trained clients in the past to go for the sub 3, then it seems that we need to do a little bit extra in order to get that, to really tick that box. But anything between 3 and 5 hours, it'll work because of the way we planned it out. And if it was a distance, if I was saying, right, you've got to be doing 20 miles this week, then if you're on for a 5-hour marathon, that's just going to take you all day. Whereas if you're on for a 3-hour marathon, that's not going to take you that long to do that, or comparatively that long anyway. And that also brings me to the next point of what pace this long run should be at, because we don't want to be necessarily running it at race pace. Now, I've always used the idea of a marathon pace per mile plus 90 seconds to 2 minutes per mile. But if your marathon pace, if your target marathon pace is, well, let's use 4 hours as an example. 4 hours is a good time, because if you're going for 4 hours, that's That's 9:09 per mile. So if you added 2 minutes onto that, then that's going to be 11:09 per mile. Now that's going to feel exceedingly slow. If you've got the potential to hit sub 4 hours and you're running at 11:09 per mile for even a couple of hours, that's going to feel quite easy to do that, which is a good thing. You might get away with running at 10:39 or about 10.5 minutes a mile. So just adding on 90 seconds per mile to your target race pace. That's okay. If you're running significantly slower than that, so let's say you're running at you're going for your 5-hour marathon, and that's, I think it's about 12 minutes a mile. I don't know off the top of my head, but let's say it's 12 minutes a mile. You probably don't need to add 2 full minutes onto that to get to 14 minutes a mile, because that's going to be quite hard to run at that pace. That's really getting close to a walking pace there, a brisk walk. So what I suggest you do is the slower your target time, the less per mile you have to add on in terms of time. So if your target time was 10 minutes a mile, maybe add on the 90 seconds. If it's 11 minutes per mile, maybe add on 80 or 70 or 80 seconds per mile. So you're adding a little bit less the faster you go, the slower you are. But the faster you are, anything under 4 hours, then you want to be making sure you do add on that time. Because, I mean, again, when I did 3 hours, my long runs, I used to go out training with a guy, and he'd be pulling me around, and he was aiming for I think he was looking for 3:30, and he would still go out, and he'd be pulling me around at sort of 8-minute mile pace, and it was just too quick for me. I mean, I could run it, but it wasn't aerobic enough. You need to feel like you can really, really hold a conversation, and in order to do that, you have to be running at your aerobic pace. So much slower than your marathon pace. The faster you are your target marathon, the more you have to add on to it. So I was running most of mine. 6:52 is my marathon pace. So I was going up to sort of 9-minute mile, 9.5-minute mile sometimes. But here's the thing: towards the end, we add in that race pace practice. So the last chunk of time of the long run, you step up that pace again, much like we did for the thresholdy runs on week 8, 9. Where you're 20 minutes easy, 20 minutes race, 20 minutes threshold. Here, you're doing this really long stretch of easy running, and then you step it up to race pace. And there's no threshold running in there, but you just step it up to race pace. And that just allows your body to experience and train itself at race pace without the side effects of running for long periods of time at that pace. Because what we don't want is to finish off spank out an amazing long run, close as damn it to your race pace, feeling really confident, but then that wipes you out for the next 4 or 5 days, and you miss out some critical training there. We don't want that. You don't want to do your best running in the training program. You want to give yourself just enough of a stimulus so that when it comes to race day, everything's there. You're going to get the fast stuff from the threshold runs that you do. Don't worry about not being fast enough. The long runs are about building that aerobic base. Let's talk about the third phase here to finish this little bit off. Weeks 11 through 16. The last 2 weeks, that's a taper. And I've really gone to town with the speed on the taper. So we've got these 60-second sprints, getting fewer and fewer each time we do them. So they're coming 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at the program now. 4 lots of 60-second sprints. And each time you do a few less runs. Now, they need to be quite quick, but you do also need to be careful with them, because the last thing you want to do is to go and injure yourself because you're not warming up properly, or you're going out too fast. You still want to build up, so it's not so much about the accelerations for those 60-second runs. You're just going hard overall. You've got plenty of recovery between them as well. They're quite tough sessions to do mentally, but they really do make a difference. Now, leading up to that, that's where you're going to get to the 2x25 threshold runs, the 1x45, 1x50 minute, 1x60-minute threshold run on week 13. Okay, there's some tough sessions there. The Yassos, again, 3 sets of Yasso 800s that we're going to be doing. They're tough sessions as well, but they really go and starts making you feel like you're getting faster and faster. Gives you that confidence of how you're going to be performing on race day. And then the long runs obviously build up as well. Now let's quickly talk about the long runs as they build up through that that final phase, because we've got some options here as well. With the long runs, I'll just flip through to one of the other downloads you have here with the long run progressions. Now actually, if you're going for a faster marathon time, you don't need to run as long, because well, you're not going to be out there for as long, so you don't need to run for as long. If you're going for 3.5 to 5.5 hours, then I would suggest sticking with the program as it is. But you can take off some time and limit yourself to 2.5 hours if you're looking for 3 to 3.5 hours of your finished time. It depends how confident you feel. That's certainly what I did, but it depends how confident you feel. Bearing in mind that the more long run, the more volume you put in, the more damage you're creating in your body, which your body then has to heal afterwards. So it does become a little bit different. That's why I've given these variable long run durations in the program. So you've got a bit of a choice there. I would certainly recommend doing as little as you can, as little as you can get away with. It's quite ironic that you're looking for the hack, the ultimate hack for running the marathon. And to be fair, there is no real hack, because the only hack for running a marathon is to not do it. We're doing this out of choice. No one does a marathon because they want to have an easy life. You do a marathon because you want to challenge yourself, but my point is that you want to do it, and you want to do just enough, where any more than just enough is going to give you either diminishing returns, or is actually going to start acting to your detriment, whereby you either increase your risk of injury, or you start to overtrain, which again is something we don't need or want. So bear that in mind as well. I'm just going to come back up here to the marathon program. Okay, let's talk very briefly about, I kind of skipped ahead there, of week 10's half marathon, because you've got a couple of options here as well, where the half marathon is an important run. It doesn't have to be a race, but it's good if it is, which is why I've given you options as well. As a download, you can look at how you plan your progressions if you were to do a half marathon either on week 9 or week 11. Both of those are fine, by the way. Week 12, you can just about get away with that as well. It needs a bit more tweaking, but you wouldn't want to do it on week 13, obviously not 14 or 59, but it just gives you a bit of an idea as to where you are with things. In fact, it gives you a very good idea, because at that point there, you can decide, how close are you to your target time, and what are you going to be. You're not running it at race pace, you're running it at a best effort half marathon. You've just had a sort of recovery week leading up to it, so you should be in pretty good shape. Many iMarathon runners have smashed their half marathon PB off the back of marathon training, which gets quite exciting when you think about it, because then you start thinking, well, what if I did the iHalf next and start smashing out some real serious PBs for the half marathon? Then the 10K project comes in, so on and so forth. But you're going to be running quick at that point. The amount of training you've done, the condition your body will be in, if you put in the effort and work, you're going to be in hot shape. So go for it, see what you got, because that's whatever happens, you're going to learn something really, really valuable, really, really important about where you are with things, given that you've only got now 6 weeks to go until the race. Is that right? 6 weeks, 6? Yeah, 6 weeks to go until the race. So if you have you absolutely kill it, and you're much faster than you thought you were going to be, then that's great news, because then you can extrapolate up. You can work out what your target time should be for a marathon based on that half marathon time, and the fact you've got 6 more weeks of training, and then you go out at that pace. But if, on the other hand, you do your half marathon and you completely bomb, and it's just, you give it everything, great conditions, no excuses, no problems, but it just didn't go, you're just not in that sort of shape, that's fine as well. You still learn something really important, because it's better to have it happen then in a half marathon than the big race that you're training for. Because all you do then is you just change either tweak the training if you need to. 6 weeks, you've still got a bit of time there to step things up. But really what you need to do is to manage your expectations, and then say to yourself, look, I want to have a really positive experience on race day. Maybe I'm not going to get sub 4, I'll go for sub 4:10 instead. And on a best case scenario, I get down to sub 4 hours, but really I'm going to be happy from where I am now. This is the kind of shape that I'm in. And to kind of make those compromises, because it's better to go out with a really clear idea what the signpost is saying about what kind of condition you're in, than to ignore all the signs, go out for the first half a marathon, 10 to 15 miles, feeling fantastic, and then all of a sudden the wheels fall off and bits start dropping off in the last sort of 7 or 8, 9 miles, because that hurts. Believe you me, that hurts, and you don't want that. Not only does it hurt, it's also a really negative experience, and we don't want that either. So the people often ask me, what are the key sessions? Well, I stripped out all the sessions that aren't key sessions, so frankly, all of these workouts are key. The one thing we haven't talked about is the body conditioning workout. There are only 3 runs in here, but there's also 1 body conditioning workout in here, and I strongly suggest you take a look at the program and you at least do part of it. Even if you just do the mobilizers and the stabilizers and don't go down the reliance on doing deadlifts and step-ups and all the good stuff that happens later on in the program with kettlebells and stuff. Do the stuff that's going to keep you injury-free. Because the people who seem to be most motivated to do the body conditioning program are those runners who have done it previously, haven't done it, and have got injured. And then do it the second time with the body conditioning, no problems. So do the body conditioning program. It's designed, it's in there for a reason. Same thing with the foam rolling, same thing with the flexibility. Take time. If you're used to training 5 days a week, then still train 5 days a week. But 2 of those sessions should be body management sessions. You've got body conditioning, then you can have a session of foam rolling. So just because you're not running doesn't mean that you're not training and adding value to your journey, to the progress that you're making as you move towards the race. Okay, let me just check here, see if there's anything else that I wanted to add in here. Don't forget you could ask questions. I'm going to go back to the Facebook group in just a moment and see if there's any questions in there that are relevant to the program. So, okay, I think I've covered just about everything that I wanted to cover there. So let me flick back to the Facebook page now and see if anybody's got any questions. I need to refresh my screen. Don't forget there's going to be a little bit of a delay, so do ask away, and if I get the questions I shall answer them. Okay, a couple of questions already, good stuff. John Hayes, welcome to the group, by the way. John didn't say welcome officially, but you just joined recently. I just wondering about hill repeats, George, how steep? I have 2 options. Practically vertical, then a nice slope, kind of like to pull out of the tunnel in the Cork Marathon. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, so well, go with the one that isn't too steep. What you want with a hill, and they're not hill repeats either. So a hill repeat is where you go really hard up the hill, and then you either jog or walk back down again. We're not doing that. We're going continuous. So if it's too steep, then what happens is you change your running style, either on the way up or the way down. We don't want that. You want to run at normal. Your normal technique, maybe with a little more of a lean, maybe with a little more of an arm drive, maybe with a little bit more of a knee pickup or a shorter step, but you're not really changing your technique markedly. So I go with the one that's a little bit less steep. Okay. Also, would you recommend cross training on the rest days, such as short cycle? No, you can do other stuff. You've got to listen to your body a little bit. That's a great question. So would you basically what you're asking is, am I recommending absolute zero, do nothing rest, or can you do some cross-training? It's okay to do some kind of cross-training. You just want to give your body a rest from running. My preference personally is to do body conditioning, but that's because I kind of like doing body conditioning training. I know not everyone does. If you want to get out on the bike, you've got to enjoy the training as well. So going out on the bike or having a game of football or doing something like that, if that helps, then it's not going to do you any harm. It probably isn't going to directly improve your performance. I've only seen one study about the effects of recovery runs that even came close to suggesting it might have some sort of benefit, and even then it was dubious. So you're not going to get any benefits, strictly speaking, because it's not specific enough, but it's not to say that it's going to do any harm if you still listen to your body, and if you feel like you do need to have that complete rest day, then take it. Andy Egan, having bonked in my first marathon at mile 19, love that phrase, partly due to injury, I think. How can I best prepare physically and mentally to avoid a repeat and have all the confidence to set out on pace for my target time? Well, the half marathon for starters will give you a good idea of that, although obviously you're only going to 13 and not 19 miles, Andy. But you really do, one of the reasons that you bonk or you go laxical, you hit the wall at mile 19 or around that area is normally because you don't, or you've gone out too fast. And that's just a case of judgment. And that kind of comes with experience. You want to have as few of those experiences as possible, of course you do. But if you know that that's happened, then what you don't want to do is use that half marathon and use the other signposts along the way to make sure that you're going out at the right pace. It's so hard in a marathon. It is the hardest thing about doing it is pacing yourself at the start. And trust me, I did the London Marathon this year, and I was a pacemaker, 3:45. Most of you probably read the story, the horrific story of what happened, and it was just, felt like I was barely jogging at the start, and hit mile 20, 21, and my goodness me, did that hurt. It took every ounce of effort I could have summoned to keep me on pace, to finish it on my pace time. So I know what you mean, but it's just a case of going out at a pace that is right for you, because it's going to hurt later on. There's no two ways. You can't avoid that pain, but you want to finish feeling strong. Fiona Mullen, is it worth doing the body conditioning more than once a week? Yes, it is. If you can do it twice a week, then yeah, just repeat the session. It's a great question, Fiona. And many people who have done it have done exactly that. Emily Ankler, sorry. So if I do a track session with my club on a Tuesday, is that okay? If you do a track session, Emily, I know you're on for a pretty sharp time. I'd say you just want to make sure that you're going for something that's going to be at least equable with the threshold run. In other words, you've got to get the right balance between threshold and volume. I've done some pretty hideous track sessions in my time when I was at university, not with the 400-meter team, but with the distance team as well, the cross-country squads. And yeah, they're brutal. So you will get some huge effects and benefits from that. I know you're in great shape anyway, so yeah, you can definitely get away with doing some track work. And I tend to do it instead of, okay, follow-up question, I tend to do it instead of threshold, but maybe alternate hills and threshold on Thursday. That would be another great idea. And actually, when I did this, because I only trained twice a week. I had one long run, and I did exactly what you suggested there. 1 week I did threshold, the next week I did hills. The next week was threshold, the next week was hills. So yes, you could absolutely do that. You're going to be in phenomenal shape. I know you're looking for a sub-3 later on this year, so that's going to be interesting to see how you get on with that. Etienne, hi. A very basic question on the hills. What do you do for the recovery part? I walk, jog, admire the scenery. I admire the scenery. And scenery is normally the bit of tarmac between my feet as I'm kind of standing there with my hands on my hips. So, yeah, you can walk around because you're going up and down a hill. You know, you're not looking at going somewhere on the recovery. So just kind of walk around, jog around, do whatever you want to do. But you want to. I tend to do as little as possible, to be honest. And when I'm doing the threshold runs and going on a circuitous route, and then I will still I'll jog, but I'll jog like at walking pace, really, really slow. So good question there. Fiona, my best effort half marathon is on the 7th of September. I booked one for the 14th as well. Is that a really bad idea, or okay if I just trot around for fun? But I've booked one for the 14th as well. And that should be okay, Fiona. If you're on the 7th of September, you got one the following week. That would just be a long run. So you're probably looking at, if I go back now, you're probably looking at what should be 2 hours and 40, there or thereabouts. If 7th of September is week 10, I'm not sure if it is or not. But yeah, about a couple of hours, 2 hours 40. So what you might want to try is to go around for fun. But actually, if you can put in a 30-minute run, almost like a split long run, so put in a 30-minute run earlier on in the day, or at the end of the day, and do the half marathon. But do the half marathon with a goal in mind of having the last 60 minutes at your marathon race pace. You definitely don't want to be racing it. And the challenge for you will be to not get caught up in the atmosphere and try and race it, because it's going to be hard to do that. Okay, Linda Riley, nutrition both whilst running and the rest of the time. Thoughts? Linda, come on, you can be more accurate, more specific with a question than that. What are my thoughts on nutrition for the rest of the time and whilst running? That's going to be the worst question I've ever been asked. No, I get what you're asking. What are my thoughts on nutrition? And you know what my philosophies are around nutrition, and certainly there's some notes in the program. I would certainly suggest tightening up your nutrition as much as possible leading up to. The closer you get to it, the better you want to be with nutrition, because it does make a difference. Same with sleep and recovery. If you're putting in all the training and you're not supporting your body with nutrients and the recovery that it needs, then it's like, I don't know, I'm plucking numbers out the air now, it's like every hour less a night you get sleep for a week, that's going to be like you missed one of those sessions that you've done. And you don't want to do that. So nutrition and recovery are going to be very, very important. I think you just asked another question. I'm just going to refresh that there. Where are we? But yeah, it's a massive subject, so I'm not going to go into nutrition in too much detail now. It is a huge, huge subject. But there's a bit of info in the notes about that. Let me get back onto here. Sorry, I just got to refresh. Okay, sorry with the nutritional question above. Supplements, are they needed? Well, okay, I'll come back to the other questions in a second, but that's a good question about supplements. If so, which ones, fish oil, etc. The ones I always recommend are fish oil, a really good quality omega-3 fish oil. Or you can get omega-3 from flaxseed as well. You just have to take a little bit more because it's not quite so potent. And magnesium and vitamin D. Now, you may also want to look at your iron supplementing, especially women who do tend to be, or can get, very commonly get low on ferritin scores and iron levels. You can get tested for that, and it's worth it. If you're feeling tired all the time, if you're not recovering between sessions, then definitely get tested for your iron levels. And also ask, if possible, to get your ferritin scores done as well, because it's not the same as your iron levels. So just because your iron looks good, the ferritin, which is how the oxygen is transported, the hemoglobin in the blood, that's going to be more of a connection there. But yeah, it is worth it, definitely worth it. There's loads of other ones you can take, obviously, but you got to, if you took like a dozen different supplements every single day, then you're never going to know what's working. So it's best to kind of start off with the ones that most people are deficient in, which are those three: omega-3, vitamin D, magnesium, and then go from there. I'm just going to back skip to Kevin Purcell's question. What if I run up a series of hills and fill up it for a period? Kevin, that works fine. In fact, if you've got a route, that's a brilliant question, by the way. If you've got a route that goes up and down hills, is undulating, then absolutely do the continuous hills like that. So you're going up, you're going down, you're going up, you're going down. You just want to make sure that you're keeping the threshold intensity. Even if you hit a bit of a flat point, that's fine as well, because actually that would be a much more enjoyable route to do. The one I did when I was doing mine was always up the same hill. It started like underneath a bridge of a motorway, it went up and went down. It was mind-numbing, but it was also the perfect gradient, so I stuck with it. Sandra, hey, have to put a question here as I can't access the YouTube comments box. That's fine. This is where all the questions are, Sandra. I'm not even looking at YouTube's comment box. Looking at Florence Marathon, end of November, I have work commitments that block some weekends. Would it be okay to start the training earlier as have time at the moment to spread it out? Okay, so you're looking at, instead of 16 weeks, doing maybe 19 or 20 weeks, I think will give you sort of towards the end of November. Yes and no. The idea between 16 weeks is it, for most people, that's a good length of time. However, if you're looking at getting the long runs in, then, and it's going to be difficult to obviously get the long runs in during the week if you really can't get them in the weekends. A couple of options here. To be honest, I can't say that it would be categorically out of the question to start a little bit earlier and spread it out as you suggested. But what you might want to consider, if it is an issue at the weekends, to try and split your run. So a 2.5-hour run, you might do an hour and 15 in the morning and then an hour and 15 in the evening. That might work as well for you. I don't know. It just depends on the logistics of the weekend. But yeah, if frankly, what are you going to do? Not work? You got to come up with something here. So you either miss those workouts completely, or you try and do it now. And better to try and spread it out and plan ahead for this than it is to try and compress everything as you get towards the end, which is what a lot of people do. Obviously, nobody in this group, because everyone's too smart in here. Gary Martin, can I do other runs in between, i.e. trail runs, maybe once a fortnight? Can I extend on the runs on the iMarathon in the early stages, i.e. a 5 to 8 minute cooldown? Yeah, there's no problem with doing. I mean, if you look at the threshold runs, for example, those runs are say 3 by 8 minutes. So you want a bit of a warm-up period, and you want a bit of a cool-down period. So it's absolutely fine to have that cool-down period. It's sort of 5 to 8, 10, 15 minutes even if you wanted to. Depends on what kind of condition you're in. In terms of adding in trail runs, I probably wouldn't advise that. Although there's no reason why you can't do some threshold running on the trails, or even some of the long runs on the trail. In fact, it's good to get off the tarmac sometimes, well, as often as you can. It's one of the tips Katrina McKinnon gave me one time, is just to do as much running off-road as possible. She's an awesome cross-country runner, so I suppose she would say that, but it really does make sense because it's much less impact on your body and you get the same conditioning effects. Linda Riley, what happens if a session is missed? Try to catch up or just leave it and move on? Yeah, you kind of got to leave it. You can catch up if you can catch up, but most of us find it difficult to then shoe in another session during the next week. And you've got to kind of still leave that space session to session, so it does get hard. What you can do as well is if you miss a session, then what you can do is sort of go halfway between the next two, if that makes sense, to do a little bit more than you've missed, but a little bit less than the previous one, the next one rather, and then the next one you're back on track. So you can get away with it that way. It's not easy, but sometimes life gets in the way, and you do have to miss a few sessions where you get unwell, or you have a niggle, or you just have to listen to your body and rest. So that's fine. But often you just have to adapt the training, adapt the program by taking a little bit out here, or maybe doing a couple of minutes less here, and then getting back on track as soon as you can. That's not ideal, but like I said, that's what life is all about. Well, it's not what life is all about. I heard that's the hokey cokey. Okay, Mel Murphy, Dublin Half Marathon is the end of week 11. Is it okay to swap it in there? Yeah, absolutely. Week 11, perfect. I said week, where are we? Let me get the right page up here for the half marathon options. You've got week 11, so if you look at the downloads, there's a download for the resources for the half marathon options. So you can actually go in there and you can have a look at how that second block would be scheduled if you were going for week 11. And the Dublin Half Marathon, I imagine there'll be lots of runners training for the marathon who are also doing the Dublin Half Marathon, so that's fine. Emily Ancliffe, how do I get enough water on a long run? We have several to do in August and my fuel belt. A couple of options for this one. I think I might have something about that in the program as well. But you can either do a bit of a loop, and on a loop you just have a water station. You literally set up a water station with water bottles you can pick up, harder than hedges or whatever you need to. Or you can get a bladder, a backpack full of water with a tube, or just something that you can keep water bottles in. But yeah, that's the way to do it, because obviously you haven't got water stations, so you need to kind of be creative with that. So either a big long run and drive it beforehand and position water in the right place where you know you're going to need it, or, like I said, do the loops. Mel Murphy, maybe a silly question, but what if I'm a 5-hour marathon and I only do 180 minutes in a long training run? 180 minutes is 3 hours. It's not a silly question. It's the question that I perhaps get asked the most, Mel. It's a really good question, because it's like you've got 2 hours in uncharted territory then. But the payoff is, the balance is, if you were to train up to 4 hours or 5 hours in the long run, that takes so much out of your body that you get diminishing returns, and actually you get a poorer performance than if you just do 3 hours and then go into the race with those 2 hours of unknown. So it isn't ideal, but you're never going to get to 5 hours in a training run anyway. I mean, no one's going to be running 5 hours in training for a marathon, even if you're targeting 5 hours. So you're always going to have some uncharted territory, but your body is capable of doing it. It's capable of doing it as long as you use that time, that training time, to build up the endurance. You build up the threshold, you build up the pace, and you build up that mental, that mindset as well. Then those last 2 hours shouldn't freak you out too much. It's hard. I know it's hard at this stage here. You're looking at thinking, well, how the heck is that going to work out? But it just works. It just works. But no, it's a good question. Dan Gary Martin, great question. Are you doing the Dublin City Marathon, George? Well, I might be. Kevin Purcell, go on, George. You know you want to. I do kind of want to do it as well, but I got a little challenge in September, which I'm planning on running 10 marathons in 10 days on a 5-mile loop around Tame, which might sound pretty boring, but that's kind of the reason I've chosen to do it. But that's a fairly big challenge for me, starting at the beginning of September, and I'm not sure what sort of shape I'll be in after that. So Dublin maybe on the cards. Actually, you know what? It depends on whether or not I can persuade Jim Organy, the race director, to let me come over and speak at the expo. If he says yes, I'm welcome, then I'll run the race, no questions. But if he gives me grief and says no, then I'll still think about entering the race, but I'm not quite sure yet. So there we go. Evasive. Let's take a look if there's any more. I'm just going to refresh here, see if there's any more questions come through. Some great questions tonight, by the way. Okay, next question, Andre, who I know isn't actually Andre. Andre, my marathon debut is in Berlin on asphalt. Is it really on asphalt? How much of my training needs to be on asphalt? Well, I'd get a good bit on asphalt tarmac. Okay, I'd get as much of it. Actually, think about it. I was kind of misread. I was thinking asphalt. I was thinking that's like track. It's not though, is it? It's just tarmac. So that's fine. Most road runs are going to be on asphalt on roads. So you want to get a bit of it on roads, obviously, to get your body ready for it. But do try and do some off road as well. It's a good question. And like I said earlier, you want to try and get a bit on the trails, a bit on grass, a bit on pitches, a bit on parkland, because it does have less of an impact on your body. So it is worthwhile spending some time getting off of the hard stuff and getting onto the softer stuff, which is a little bit more forgiving. I'm just going to check back here a second, and then I'm going to go. I'll obviously one more check back to the Facebook page in just a moment. But I just wanted to say as well, I mean, obviously some great questions there. You can ask questions anytime you want to within the Facebook coaching group. And those guys and girls who've been there for a while now, you absolutely rock this group, because it's got such a momentum of its own now. It's got this life of its own, and I feel like, you know, I've started it, but it's not my group anymore. I mean, obviously I'm a big part of it, but it's not just me in there who's able to answer questions. So if you ask a question, and I recommend you do ask questions and use this group, then you've got the benefit of not just getting me answering, but you've also got maybe a dozen or 2 dozen other runners who have done the program, and they'll give you the wisdom of their knowledge and their experience. And that's a really powerful thing, because it means that you're getting it from people who have been through what you've been through, people who are doing what you're doing right now, and that kind of camaraderie and group support is much more powerful than just me saying, yeah, this is what you have to do, which hopefully has some value and some weight. But I honestly believe that the group is the best training group that certainly it's the best one I've ever created, and it's the best one I've ever been in as well. So I just want to say thanks to you guys for being a part of that. Whilst I check back now and see if there's any more really good questions come up. Well done to Jenny Keevy, by the way, my sister, who's just done a 20th marathon today. Pretty good, pretty good. Although when I do my 10, that's going to take me to within shooting distance, so maybe I will still be the first to reach 100. I know that would really rather. Jenny actually was the first person out of either of us to do a marathon, which she loves. She loves reminding me of that. So anyway, no more questions other than Gary saying, great webinar, peace out, thanks for the info. Guys, I'm going to leave it there and say thank you very much for attending and for your great questions and your ongoing enthusiasm and evangelizing about the intelligent running programs. I really do appreciate it. It's a tough job getting the word out there, because people just don't necessarily get it, what it's all about. You guys do get it, and that means a lot to me. So thank you very much, and I will be checking you later. Bye for now.